Okay, we ended up last week on chapter 4, verse 14. And but before we start, I want to do a little overview of what's going on here. Okay. So now you know that Persia is the same as Iran.
Yeah.
They're the same country.
Right.
Okay. And so Persia under Cyrus gave them back their freedom. And then Artaxerxes let Nehemiah come to build the walls. And then he returned back, and then later on he came back and was governor again later. But for 12 years while they were building the wall. Well, actually, to build the wall only took 52 weeks. It was like a miracle that 52 days. It was a miracle that it happened that fast. But we'll talk more about that later. But anyway, so this is the timeline of Nehemiah, and Ezra was there at the same time. And Ezra was more of the spiritual leader, and Nehemiah was more of the physical leader. Okay. And, okay, so the next picture, I just want to show you that. Okay, so this represents Persia, and these are the Jewish people, and Persia or Iran is letting the people go, giving them their freedom. And then the next picture, this is the IDF, and that's Iran. And it took 2,500 years for the debt to be paid. And they are freeing Persia. And so, in fact, they even said that. The Persians said that. It took 25 years for us to free us. And Persia was a friend of Israel. They were the second one to recognize them as a nation. And they had a peace pact with them, trade and military. So if anybody attacked Israel or anybody attacked Persia or Iran, that they would defend each other up until 1979. And then 1979, the Ayatollahs took over, and then it was death to Israel, death to America, and everything else. So anyway, so they're freeing them from that. And so they're grateful. They're out protesting in the streets, or celebrating in the streets that Israel is saving them from the dictator that they had. What surprised me was there were 300,000 Iranians in New York celebrating which was wonderful. San Francisco, there was 100,000. In Washington, there was 100,000. In Boston, in Chicago, even in Texas, there were hundreds of thousands. There was a lot of Iranians here. There's probably more Iranians here than in Iran. There's a lot of them here. But they're all celebrating. And even in Iran, they're celebrating. Well, and right now they're not. Right now they're hiding because the bombs are going off, and they're trying to take out all their the military and the police that are against them. And some of the military now is throwing down their arms. They're saying, well, we're forced to do this stuff, because the Iranian people actually like Israel, and so it's just that the leadership didn't. Okay, well, a little background of what we've been talking about is that the enemies of Israel were threatening to attack. And so I'll go back to verse 13, and it says, chapter 4, verse 13, "Therefore I positioned men behind the lower parts of the wall at the openings and set the people according to their families with their swords, their spears, and their bows." So he's getting them ready because there's threats of attack from outside. Now, verse 14, this is where we start tonight. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles and the leaders and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. So the rallying cry is, great is the Lord. The Lord is going to defend you. The Lord you're on the Lord's side. Remember the Lord. And then it says, fight for your sons and your daughters and your wives. And so what he did was he put the families together so that they would have more of an incentive to fight. Okay, verse 15. And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, everyone to his work. Okay, so the enemy realized, okay, they're ready now. They're ready for them. We're ready for attacks. And so then they sort of backed off. They said, well, I guess, because the armies were getting ready to attack, and then they saw the Israelites with swords, and they're ready for something to happen, so they backed off. So they returned to work and worked to go finish the wall. So it was from that time on that half of my servants worked at construction, while the other half held spears, shields, bows, and the war armor. And the leaders were behind all the house of Judea. And so there's a rotation. It was a full mobilization. Everybody was out on the wall. Either they were working on the wall or they had swords and stuff. So it was either one or the other. Okay, verse 17. Those who built on the wall and those who carried burdens loaded themselves so that with one hand they worked at the construction and with the other hand they held a weapon. This is the trowel and the sword. You know, they had a trowel and they had a sword. We build the kingdom, that's like our trowel, and resist the devil, which is our sword. If you have a trowel but no sword, you'll be killed. If you have a sword but no trowel, nothing gets done. So you have to have both. You have to have, we're working for the Lord and have the Word of God, which is the sword of the Spirit. Okay, verse 18. Every one of the builders had his sword girded at his side as he built, and the one who sounded the trumpet was beside me. So the sword was girded on. That means it's around their waist. They have a sword right here. It's all ready, just to be used. And he also had a one that's on the wall with the trumpet. And so Nehemiah kept the communications officer near him so that he could warn people. And these next two verses go more into that. Verse 19 and verse 20. Then I said to the nobles, the leaders, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated far from one another on the wall. Whenever you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us. Our God will fight for us. And so he had people on the wall with the trumpets, and I don't know where the picture is, but okay. Anyway, nope, that's not it. There you go. There he is. That's a trumpet. It's supposed to be. It looks like a bell, but it's supposed to be. It's a trumpet. Well, what happened was they were all around the whole city on a wall. And so they couldn't, if somebody was being attacked on one side, they wouldn't know it. So they had people on the walls with trumpets, and when they heard the trumpet, then they went to that wherever that point was. And then this way they could fight whoever was coming. So it's like the church. It's like when somebody is not feeling well, or somebody's hurting, or somebody's in need, then everybody should rally to that person and help that person. It's like the oranges. Those are good oranges. And So they bring, Ruth and Dennis bring the oranges to share with everybody, and that's what we should do. We should help each other and share with each other. And if somebody needs help, then we help them, And when I was a little more able, I helped Brian and Misa move. But anyway, right now I'm going through something, so it's okay. But I'll be better in April. That's what they keep saying. Everything's going to be okay in April. So. Yeah, I will. Praise the Lord. He got me through everything, though, which was good. Okay, verse 21. So we labored in work. Half the men held spears from the daybreak until the stars appeared. From daybreak to the stars, that means that's not a 40-hour work week. That's working 7 days a week from daybreak to night. So they're working 16-hour days. They're working hard to get this wall done. They're in survival mode, is what they were. Okay, verse 22. At the same time, I also said to the people, let each man and his servant stay the night in Jerusalem, that they may be our guard by night and work party by day. So no one was going home. They lived outside of Jerusalem. Some lived as far as Jericho, but they lived outside of Jerusalem in little villages and such. But nobody went home at night. They all stayed in Jerusalem. So, if they're working 16-hour days, they're not going to have time to go all the way to home and come back. And so they all stayed there in Jerusalem. And so they inhabited the city. Okay, verse 23. So neither I, my brother, and my servants, nor my men of the guard who followed me took off their clothes, except that everyone took them off for washing. So they worked and slept 24/7 in their clothes, in their battle dress. They were always ready, because you never knew when something was going to happen. And Nehemiah didn't stay in a special place either. He stayed in the trenches with the people. And it says they took them off for washing. After a while, it starts stinking. If you're working and you're sweating and you're, for days and days and days and weeks, you start getting an odor about you. When I was in the Army and I was in Vietnam, I was in the light infantry air mobile, and so what they would do is they come with the helicopters. We all get the helicopters. They take us out to I don't know where, in the middle of no place, and then we have to work our way back. Camp out overnight in different places, but work our way back, and it'd take us a month, and we'd be a month out there, and then come back, and then a month out, and then a month back, and it was search and destroy. You'd look for things and destroy them, and different things. But when you come back after the month, you haven't washed, and you smell, but you didn't know you smelled. No, you didn't. You didn't know. The whole squad, we were just all didn't smell or nothing, And then we come inside to wash, because we get a couple of days, to stay in the base camp. And you take off your clothes and you go take a shower and you come back and get new clothes on. The old clothes smelt so bad that we just threw them away. We just said, we just can't do this. So we had a big pile that we just throw them inside. They just smelled. They washed them and everything else, but they just stunk. Man, they stunk. But we didn't know we smelled. It's amazing. We didn't know. It was like, I don't know, you get used to it, I guess, and everybody smells the same, so, But anyway, so that's what happened over there. So I learned a lot about smells. And then nobody had deodorant. We're on the field. We didn't have deodorant. We didn't have shampoo. We didn't wash. We didn't do nothing. Just the only time we ever got water is when we went through rivers, then everybody sort of clean off a little bit, but as you're walking, there was no showers out there, And when I was with the Rangers, we ate off the land, and we brought rice with us because I was with the Arvin Rangers, the Vietnamese Rangers. And so there was 12 of us and 12 of them, or 10, sometimes 10, And so we would bring rice, and then when it came to dinner time, we'd shoot something, or they would throw a grenade in the water, and then the fish would come up, and then we all go out there and get the fish, and or else they'll shoot, whatever in the trees, monkeys or wild boar or whatever. So we would eat whatever we caught that night. We'd have rice and that. And I went over there weighing 135. I came back weighing 110. So lost a lot of weight. I was just so skinny. I made up for it, though. But, I lost a lot of weight over there.
You back up to 135?
Yeah, I wish. No. Well, the stuff I'm on, what happens is that it makes me real tired in the afternoon, so I just don't want to do anything. And in the mornings, I'm okay, so that's when I do laundry and I do shopping and do all that stuff. But then after lunch, then it's sort of like, just don't want to do anything. And they said that I'll slowly get better, and then by April, I'll be the way I was before, which was wired all the time, so which is good. Okay, chapter 5. Okay, now this one, before the attack was from outside. Now they're switching to the inside the Jewish people in Jerusalem. So let's go to verse 1. Okay, and there was a great outcry of the people and their wives against their Jewish brethren. There was an outcry, which means, now I looked this up, for a scream of oppression. So they were screaming with oppression, and the target wasn't the pagans or the Persians, or it was their Jewish brethren, the people that were supposed to be standing in the gap were now creating the gap. They were now against them. Sometimes the church becomes their own worst enemy. Sometimes the church develops little cliques and stuff and excludes people where, everybody should be welcome. Of course, you can have closer friends, but, you should welcome everybody. Okay, so what they were doing was they were price gouging the different nobles, and the leaders were gouging their prices, and they were charging the people that were working higher prices because they couldn't go out and raise crops. They were staying in the city all the time, and so they couldn't work their farms. They couldn't do anything, and so they needed money to buy food and all that. And so the nobles and the rulers were taking advantage of that, and they were loaning them money at high interest rates. It's like people are the same way today. It's like say when there's a hurricane or there's a big earthquake or a flood, then all of a sudden you see all the prices go up on everything. The gas, the price gouging, and like people are buying water. Well, instead of for $4 for a rack of water, then all of a sudden it's $20 for a rack of water, and they do that. And sometimes the government tries to step in and say, like we're going to stop this, and FEMA will try to regulate it. But that's what happens with it's supply and demand. When things get scarce, they're going to do that. Well, the leaders in the nobles were price gouging the workers, the Jewish people. Okay, let's go to verse 2. For there were those who said, we, our sons and our daughters are many. Therefore, let us get grain that we may eat and live. Okay, so this group represents the laborers, the guys with the trowels. They have large families. They're working on the wall for free. They're not getting a salary for working on the wall. But they aren't in the fields either making an income. So they're not lazy. They're just leverage for the kingdom. But their cupboards are empty and they're in survival mode. So verse 3, there were also some who said, we have mortgaged our lands and our vineyards and our houses that we might buy grain because of famine. This is the middle class. The middle class is getting squeezed now. They own property, but they have no liquidity. There's a famine in the land, and to buy bread, they're putting liens on their homes and their farms. And they're trading their future for dinner today. And so that's what they're doing. And the bankers, which is the nobles and the rulers, are saying, okay, you sign us over your property, and then we'll give you money. And that's what they were doing. And you'll see they're not supposed to do that. But let's keep reading. Verse 4. There were also those who said, we have borrowed money for the king's tax on our lands and vineyards. Okay, now here's the taxpayers. Artaxerxes didn't care. He wanted his tribute. He didn't care if they weren't able to work the fields. He didn't care. He just wanted their tributes. So these people were borrowing money just to pay the government. If you have to go into debt to pay your taxes, then you're not a citizen any longer. You're a serf. You're a slave to the government. And I'm not going to get political on that. So let's go to verse 5. Yet now our flesh is as the flesh of our brethren, our children as their children. And indeed, we are forcing our sons and our daughters to be slaves. And some of our daughters have been brought into slavery. It is not in our power to redeem them, for others have our lands and vineyards. So it's getting to the point where they're even selling their kids just to get enough food to feed the rest of the family. And it's their own fellow Jews that are doing this to them. So what it was the haves were cannibalizing the have-nots. They were taking advantage of them. So Nehemiah heard about it. And so now this is his response to all of this. Nehemiah says, and I became very angry when I heard their outcry and these words. He doesn't just say, oh, well, that's the way things are. He gets very angry about it. He's the governor of Jerusalem. And so he's going to call the leaders and I'll have a big talk with them. So in verse 7, after serious thought, I rebuked the nobles and rulers and said to them, each of you is exacting usury, that's interest, from his brother. So I called a great assembly against them. So Nehemiah just didn't invent. He gathered them all in a public place and told them that they're not allowed to charge interest on their brothers, especially if they're in need. I mean, the people were selling their children into slavery. Here they came out of slavery, and now they're selling their children into slavery just so that they could eat and get by. So that's why Nehemiah he's mad. He's angry at these people. So he's yelling at them. Charging interest against a brother in need was a capital crime. And so let's just read Exodus. Okay, wait, let me go with Exodus. Okay, Exodus chapter 22, verse 25. If you lend money to any of my people who are poor among you, you shall not be like a money lender to them. You shall not charge him interest. And so this was one of the laws that they made, that if one of your brothers, and they're speaking, when they say brothers, that means all of the Jewish people, the Jews. And if one of your brothers was in need, then you could lend him money, but don't be like the money changers and charge them a high interest. And he did call a great assembly, so this way it was public. It wasn't like a secret meeting saying, hey, you guys ought to, not charge them interest. But he had a public meeting so everybody could hear what was going on. Okay, verse 8. And I said to them, according to our ability, we have redeemed our Jewish brethren who were sold to the nations. Now, indeed, will you even sell your brethren, or should they be sold to us? And then they were silent and could not find a word to say. Nehemiah saying that he was using his own money. I mean, he had an allotment from Artaxerxes to be governor, and he had so much money. He was even using his own money to help the poor people, help them out. But the nobles were selling them back into slavery. He said, it's absurd what you guys are doing to the people. The rich were struck dumb. They have no defense, profiting off the misery of the saints. People do that, or the government has done that today. I mean, they spent $24 billion to help the poor people. And out of the $24 billion, I doubt if $1 million got to the poor people. It all went through CEOs of these companies, and then it went to their people, and then, all the different, and it wound up with nothing going to the homeless are still there. There's just as many homeless, if not more. So who have they helped? If they had that $24 billion, they could have just gave the money out to everybody, and it would have went further. I mean, a lot of them would have spent it on drugs and alcohol and stuff, but at least they could find programs. A lot of stuff happened when the state of California stopped the mental institutions. There used to be mental institutions. There was one in Vacaville, and they were all over. And they shut them all down and let all the people out. And so then that was part of the problem. And then the drug problem, that's another problem that happened, and alcoholism, and then the high cost of living. I mean, there's some people that even have jobs, but they're homeless because they can't afford an apartment. They can't afford a house. They're making, an apartment now costs like $2,000 or more. I mean, I'm talking one bedroom. And so some people can't even afford that. So they're living in the streets. With all the money that's being spent, there are houses, there are lots that they could build a lot of tiny homes on them with a rec center and with a community bathroom and fix it all up and everything for way cheaper than that. But there's too many environmental regulations and they won't let them do it. So, I don't know. California isn't, I don't know. Someday, the Lord will come back. He'll straighten everything out. That's my hope. Okay, now let's go to verse 9. Then I said, what you are doing is not good. You should not walk in fear of our God because of the reproach of nations or our enemies. The reproach, the world is watching. If the Jews act just like the Ammonites, why should the world believe in God? The fear of the Lord is the only thing that restrains the predatory nature of man. In fact, when the founding fathers were making the Constitution, you had to have the fear of God in order for everything to work. And that's what they said. They said that it was made for godly people. And we've gotten so far away from that now, so it's, I don't know. But the enemies were watching them. And so he's saying that the enemy's watching you rip off your own people. People are always watching you. You know, neighbors or if you go to the store, or you go to a gas station or at work, people are always watching you. I found out I have a neighbor who lives across, a catty corner from me. And one day he was out there walking his dog, and I was going to go get the mail. And he said, why don't you ever use your front door? You always use your back door. I'm thinking, man, that's creepy. Were you watching me all the time? You know, what do you watch me going into the back door instead of the front door? I said, I have a reason for it, but I didn't tell him. But I just said, what are you watching me for like that? And I just kept on going, you know. He's sort of creepy. The reason I do it. Yeah, well, if he finds out, he does not. Anyway. But I have the coat racks in there so I can put my coat on and go out. I have my shoes there because I walk around the house in slippers. And so I have everything there in the back right there. And so that's why I use the back door. The front door is the living room. And so I don't want to have coat racks and my shoes and, you know, and stuff. So anyway, that's why I use the back door. What, TMI? Anyway, that's why. Okay. Okay. Anyway. Verse 10. I also, with my brethren and my servants, am lending them money and grain. Please let us stop this usury. So Nehemiah admits that he's leading by example. He's been doing it in secret. He hasn't been broadcasting this, letting people know that that's what he's been doing, that he's been helping people out and giving them money, buying grain for them and all that. He's been doing it in secret. But now he's just letting them know that, you know, I mean, here, I'm doing this out of my money. You know, you need to stop ripping the people off. A lot of things that are done in secret. There's people that are that you see serving the Lord, like the worship team. You can see them serving the Lord. The ushers, you know, you can see them. People that are working in the church, you can see them. But there's a lot of people, and important work is praying. A lot of people are praying. In fact, Billy Graham, they were talking about what was his success with these big giant, you know, gatherings he had, the Crusades. He says because people were praying. He says he had people praying for all these things, and that's what made him successful. He said, I'm not a great preacher, although he sure sounded like one, but humbly he said that. But he says that it was the people praying for him. So there's a lot of people that are that either can't do things, or they do things in addition. They pray, but prayer is important because that's your connection with God. And through prayer, things get done. Okay, verse 11. Restore now to them, even this day, their land, their vineyards, their olive groves, their houses, and also 100th of the money and the grain and the new wine and the oil that you have charged them. So this is called like debt jubilee. The Jews do have a jubilee every 50 years where they free the slaves, anybody that's working for them. But he demands immediate restitution, not the next quarter, not after the wall is done, but today. He says, today, return the property and the interest. And it says 100th of the money. So it's likely 1% that they could return 1% of the interest, and keep the other, but give them back their land and their children and their vineyards. And then that's supposed to be the nobles giving them back their money and giving them back their land and their vineyards. Because they put all that stuff, they put liens on all that stuff.
Are those American dollars?
Those are Jewish shekels. That's AI, okay? I can't help it. I said, have them give money, so they gave dollar bills. Anyway, they're giving them back the money. They're giving them back their land. They're giving them back they start getting the fear of God in them. And then Nehemiah puts a cap on all this in this next verse. I enjoyed this verse, enjoyed the study, because it's a lot of interesting things that happen in it. So verse 12, and so they said, we will restore them. We will require nothing from them. So we will do as you said. Then I, that's Nehemiah, called a priest and required an oath from them that they may do according to their promise, this promise. So talk is cheap. But he had them, the priest, require an oath from them. So it was like a notary saying, okay, so here's a notary, now it's legal. You got to do this now. So he puts it on record before God that they're going to return all their property, their vineyards, their money, all that stuff. So, okay, verse 13. Then I shook out the fold of my garment and said, so may God shake out each man from his house and from his property who does not perform this promise. Even thus shall he be shaken out and emptied. And all the assembly said, amen, and praised the Lord. So the people did according to his promise. This shaking out of his garment, of his lap, that's saying that if you break this promise, I will empty your life. It was a visual that they were making a promise to God, and if you break a promise to God, God was going to empty your life. And so all these rich people weren't going to be rich anymore. So not only did they agree, but they also said, praise the Lord, because justice had been restored to the camp. Okay, verse 14. Moreover, from the time that I was appointed to be the governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year till the 32nd year of King Artaxerxes, 12 years, neither I nor my brothers ate the governor's provisions. So for 12 years, see, he could have had, like governors before him, have big feasts and stuff. They had an allotment from the king of Persia, and they could have had big feast every night and taking money from the people. They could have did a lot of things, but he didn't. He didn't take anything, either him or anybody that was in his staff. So for 12 years, he refused his perks. He had legal right to a salary, but he had a moral obligation to the people. He wasn't a political parasite. He was a man of the people. Verse 15, but the former governors who were before me laid burdens on the people and took from them bread and wine, besides 40 shekels of silver. Yes, even their servants bore rule over the people. But I did not do so because of the fear of God. So the previous administrations, the previous governors were tax and spend. You know, they got money from the people and they spend it on themselves, and they got money from the Persians and they spent it on themselves. He wasn't motivated by approval ratings. It was the fear of God. That's what he says. Okay, verse 16. Indeed, I also continued the work on this wall, and we did not buy any land. All my servants were gathered there for work. He didn't use insider information to buy cheap land during the famine, like some politicians I know. They're making money off of insider information. Nancy Pelosi. And he wasn't flipping real estate while the wall was being built. He was a working governor. And so he was working on the wall alongside everybody else. Did you know, I found this out. This is interesting. Up until 1930, Congress and the Senate were part-time. They only went to Washington like a week out of a quarter and did their business and stuff. And then they went back. They had jobs. I mean, they were working politicians up to 1930. So I didn't know that. I mean, that was interesting to me, that they were all part-time. That'd be nice to have that done now. I mean, that'd save us a lot of these regulations and stuff, because they would, they would only have a couple of weeks to ram stuff down our throat. And they can't get nothing done anyway, Every single year, they know when the budget's due. Every single year, they never make it. They always go over. Okay. Verse 19. Remember me, my God, for good, according to all I have done for this people. What's that?
17.
How about if we try 17 again?
Why, what happened? Oh, verse 17. And at my table were 150 Jews and rulers, besides those who came to us from the nations around us. Verse 18 too. Now, that which was prepared daily for me was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep. Also a fowl were prepared for me. And once every 10 days, an abundance of all kinds of wine. Yet, in spite of all this, I did not demand the governor's provisions because the bondage was heavy on this people. So he fed the government out of his own private wealth. He was a wealth creator. He wasn't a wealth user. He poured his resources into the nation rather than sucking them out. Now verse 19. Remember me, O God, for good, according to all that I have done for this people. So Nehemiah wasn't looking for a statue to be built for him, and or a park or a building named after him. He was looking for a well done from God, and that's what he was looking for. He was playing for an audience of one, was God. He was looking at this, well done, my good and faithful servant, like in Matthew 25:21. And that's what he wanted. When I saw this thing, Nehemiah wasn't looking for a statue in the park. If you go to Todos Santos Park, there's a statue in Todos Santos Park. When my brother was mayor, he had that built. That was the one he had built. And they gathered the funds and everything. What didn't come from the Concord money, It was all private donations, and he had that built. And it was, I forget who the statue is of.
Not Nehemiah?
No, it's not Nehemiah. But he was instrumental in getting that thing done. His grandkids, Samantha and Noah, think that's a statue of him. So he goes, there's Grandpa, there's Grandpa. He says, no, it's not. It's not me. It's Pacheco. I think it's Pacheco. But anyway, that's funny, though. Now, verse 19, did you have the picture of Nehemiah leaving? Yep, there's Nehemiah. And he left after the job was done. And then he came back later on to be governor again. I have him leaving because it says, remember me, O God. You know, so. But he hasn't really gone yet. Because now we're going to get into chapter 6. This is when I think we could get through this. We'll find out. If we don't, we'll keep on going. Okay. So they're arrived at the finish line of the construction, but this is the most dangerous part now because the wall is built. The gates aren't up yet completely, so they're still vulnerable to attack. At first, the enemy in chapter 4 used mockery against the people. Then chapter 5, it was money that was within. And now chapter 6, they're going to go for Nehemiah. And they're going to use slander and subterfuge to try to take him out. So let's go to verse 1. Now it happened that Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had rebuilt the wall and that there were no breaks left in it, though at the time I had not hung the doors in the gates. So the wall is structurally completed, but the valves, the gates, aren't hung yet. So the project is at its most vulnerable, the integration phase. And the enemies know that they cannot stop Nehemiah now. It's game over. But news traveled fast. I mean, here, Sanballat, Tobiah, all these different other nations that were around them were hearing about it. So they were monitoring their progress. And like I said before, your neighbors and your friends and your relatives are all monitoring you. They're all watching you and seeing how good of a witness you have. They watch how you react to situations. I had a friend of mine at work, and he was a Christian, and he wound up with stomach cancer, and he stayed at work. I mean, he had 6 months to live, but he stayed at work. And I said, "Why are you staying at work?" He said, "I want to be a good witness to people." And he was always up and talking about God, talking about Jesus, like that. And people did take note of that. They're saying, "Man, I mean, the guy's dying, and here he's talking about Jesus, and he's going to heaven and all this stuff." So it made a mark. I don't know anybody got saved out of it, but at least he made a mark on people's lives. Okay, verse 2. That Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, "Come, let us meet together among the villages in the plains of Ono." But they thought to do me harm. Ono was 25 miles away. It was a 2-day trip. They wanted him away from all of his support, all of his base of support. This was enemy's turf. Never negotiate on your enemy's turf. Don't go to the people that are against you. Don't go to their place of business or their place. Meet at some neutral ground, a coffee shop or meet in a park or something where it's neutral so they don't ambush you. So, is there a picture for that? I don't know. No, that's the... That's verse 4. Okay, we're in verse 3 now. Or, well, no, that's verse 1. They sent him a scroll saying, that to meet him at, oh, no. That's 4 scrolls. That's the next one. Okay, it's okay. That's okay. That's verse 4. Okay, let's go to verse 3. So I sent messengers to them saying, I am doing a great work, so I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it to go down to you? So he's saying, I'm too busy to go to you. So they're trying to distract him, and they're trying to get him away so that they can ambush him. But he realizes that, and so he says that he uses the excuse saying, I'm too busy to go to you. Okay, verse 4. But they sent me this message 4 times, and I answered them in the same manner. Okay, so that's the 4 scrolls. 4 different times they came to him, the same thing, the same message over and over. The enemy was relentless. They hoped by wearing you down, you'd say, okay, well, I'll go. Kids do this. They'll ask you for something. Oh, could I do this? Could I do this? Could I do this? Then they go to the mother. Could I do this? Could I do? And then finally, after a while, you say, oh, just go on and do it, And but you shouldn't give in to that. Now, grandkids, I give in to that. My kids, I never get into that and stuff. But grandkids, you sort of, give them a break. Okay, verse 5. Then Sanballat sent his servant to me as before, a 5th time, with an open letter in his hand. So that means it was an open letter and it wasn't sealed. That meant it could be read by anybody. And so, that's how, it's a leaked document. It's a trial by social media. They wanted to spread the rumor to see if it would stick. There's some political party that what they do is they tell a lie and they keep telling the same lie. Then they give it to the media and the media says the same lie and people start believing it. You say a lie long enough and people will start believing it. I won't say who it is. Okay, anyway. Okay, so let's go to verse 6. In it was written, it is reported among the nations that Geshem says that you and the Jews plan to rebel. Therefore, according to these rumors, you are rebuilding the wall and that you may be their king. So it says, it is reported. Unnamed sources. Fake news. Like the media today. They just come out with some fake news. And it's always unnamed sources say this and unnamed sources say that. So it's a vague sourcing. It says people are saying this is an anonymous source. The trick is to create a false narrative. And the accusation is treason against Persia. So they're saying that he's planning treason against Persia. Okay, let's see how much more you got. Yeah, okay, we're going to have to stop. Okay, let's do verse 7, I guess. And then we'll stop after that. Okay, verse 7. And you have also appointed prophets to proclaim concerning you at Jerusalem, saying, there is a king in Judah. Now these matters will be reported to the king. So come, therefore, and let us consult together. Okay, so this is blackmail. Now they're blackmailing him. They're saying that, we're going to report to Artaxerxes unless you come and talk to us. So they're trying to blackmail him. So anyway, we'll stop there because it's getting late. But they're trying all these different things to try to get to Nehemiah, and it doesn't work, by the way. So, but we'll stop here and then continue next time.